Hey, what's up, family? So, for those of you who don't know me, I go by Mary Truths on Instagram, Mary_Truths, and I also have a wellness platform called MB Elevate. So, I decided this year to no longer censor myself and actually say what I'm thinking out loud. Not just to my friends and my family, but to the internet. Because I strongly feel many people think like me, but they don't want to say it out loud or even admit it publicly because they fear backlash. They fear a pushback. And I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of caring about what are people going to think if I say this. Because that mindset has been prolonging itself for so long that now I believe we are at a stage in America where everybody is confused, living in fear, and aggressive, very aggressive. And I want to be another platform that people can go to and actually get grassroots, genuine perspective on current events and on even history. I am a true believer that in order for you to improve your future, you have to recognize your past to learn from it. Your past has many lessons, and we need to be receptive and learn those lessons in order to actually have control over the future. So let me give you some backstory on who I am and why I've decided to do this, aside from what I've already said. I'm Cuban American, so I was not born here. I became a citizen right before becoming an adult. That was a pretty big moment in my life because I wasn't a citizen the majority of my childhood. So when I became a citizen right before turning 18, it hits different. I don't know how to explain it, because when you're born here, you're already a citizen. But when you come from a different country, and even when I became a resident, it was a big deal. So the way I feel about the subject I'm going to talk about today hits close to home because I'm an immigrant. My whole family are immigrants. Even though I wasn't raised in Cuba, my parents tell me a lot of stories about their upbringing when they were living in Cuba. So I just want to give you a little bit of history about Cuba. And I strongly believe that what they did in Cuba, they're attempting to do in the United States. So, Cuba used to be a very abundant country. It was a very rich and wealthy country until the revolution, which was not a revolution, but that's what they called it, happened. And that's when Fidel Castro was the leader of that revolution, selling to the Cuban people a socialist ideology. And that socialist ideology somehow convinced the Cuban people to give away their weapons. And obviously, we all know once you give away the right to bear arms, they got you. You're done. So, as a result, it's been 60 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, give or take. And it's become a ghost island because millions of Cubans have fled for many years now because it was a failed attempt to manifest communism. It was a complete failure, but I still believe they're trying to manifest that same failure in a grander scale like the United States. And as you continue watching me and hearing my perspective, you'll see where I'm going. So, now that you know that I come from a country that was a failed nation due to a Marxist ideology, I can better explain why I'm so passionate about this. I love taking care of myself. I love the idea of focusing on becoming a better version of yourself. And I think that is the foundation to anything, is focusing on how to improve yourself. Because as we improve ourselves internally, it reflects and projects to the external world. So, because I'm so focused on my well-being that I've become aware of my external world. Coming from a family of immigrants fleeing a communist nation, I really feel extremely strong when it comes to the topic at hand, which is going to be the border. Border security is one of the most important things on everybody's mind because it directly affects our safety. And that is something we all ought to be focused on. Whether you have family or you don't, you should always focus on protecting yourself, securing yourself. That's why wellness is important. So, focusing on securing our country is extremely important. Just like we focus on always staying healthy, or we do our best to focus on staying healthy, our body's immune system is the border. So if we have to maintain security within our own body, we have to do the same thing with the land we live on. I think that makes perfect sense. I think it's perfectly rational and logical for us to believe this. Now, I want to give you some information I've gathered when it comes to the border. The border is a very complex issue because you're dealing with the security of American citizens and just residents, civilians, and at the same time, you're also dealing with immigration. So I decided to do this as my first video because it hits home. I am an immigrant, so this I'm very passionate about. I went back into the Obama's administration. So Obama actually deported the most people out of Bush and Trump. Obama has deported the most. Before he left office, he made this program called DACA. And DACA was a program that was able to legally house illegal immigrant children. So Obama deported a bunch of people, his 2 terms, but he kept children without their parents here in the States. I'm gonna come back to this. So I'm putting this on the table right now. That is one of the things Obama did. Okay. Obama was known as the biggest deporter. They even called him deporter in chief because of how many people he deported. He was extremely strict when it came to employment. He was trying to force employers to use the E-Verify. That way the employers can't be employing illegal immigrants and pay them underneath the table. Not only did he do that, he created these camps for children, and they were called detention centers. They literally looked like jails for children. Extremely inhumane, which, ironic enough, the Democratic Party is considering the border crisis a humanitarian crisis, yet during the Obama administration, his whole immigration policy was inhumane, the way he was handling it, and he was handling it inhumanely for 8 years. So the fact that we want to say that allowing a bunch of people to flood through the border, as what's been going on since the Biden administration, is not inhumane, is outrageous. So Obama's administration and Biden's administration have the same mindset when it comes to how to handle the border. Except there is way more people crossing the border during Biden's administration versus during Obama's administration. Now, during Trump's administration, their administration was extremely different on how they were going to handle the border, because they had a policy called Remain in Mexico, which literally just meant you cannot come in here until you've been fully vetted first. We need to fully fact check you pretty much before you can come in. Now, I understand what's happening in Central and South America is a reason to seek refuge in the United States. It makes perfect sense for you to flee your country, as my family did, to seek refuge in a country that actually is willing to welcome you, because this country was created through immigration. We all understand that. We all get that. Here's the problem. None of these countries are actually fixing the long-term problem by just allowing a bunch of people to come here, because we don't have the resources to be able to handle the amount of people coming through the border. Especially because the cartels, which are a terrorist organization that smuggle humans and drugs, are using immigration as leverage to do their business and bring in their products through the United States. They're using the United States as a transaction deal with whoever the customer is on the other side of that transaction. This is a really big problem, because a lot of people are saying we should allow these immigrants to come in, but we're not realizing that a lot of these immigrants who are coming in paid the cartels to allow them to cross the border, because Mexico and none of these other countries have any control over their borders. It's all cartel control. Versus during Trump, they were super strict on the border. Why? Because during the Trump administration, they understood this is not just an immigration crisis, this is a humanitarian crisis, because the cartels are using immigration as a means to do their business, and their business is illegal. Their business is inhumane. And then during the Trump administration, there was so much less people trying to cross. The numbers went down significantly versus the Obama administration. During the Trump administration, there was a huge difference in data in such a short amount of time that it proves that the policies that were being put during the Trump era were actually working. Side note, I didn't vote for Trump. So just to make it really clear to a lot of you, because a lot of people think I voted for Trump. I did not vote for Trump. But I recognize good policies when the results speak for themselves. And the results spoke for themselves. Data does not lie. Numbers do not lie. Words lie. Numbers don't lie. Numbers are very black and white, ladies and gentlemen. And you can see clear as day that there was a huge, drastic drop from Obama's two-term presidency to Trump's one-term presidency. There's a huge drop. That is for a reason. That tells you we were actually doing something. We were actually making changes for the better. During the Trump administration, they kept saying he was separating families. They kept saying he was putting kids in cages. However, the president who put kids in cages was not Trump, it was Obama. The president who actually did separate families, because he did deport millions of people while leaving children without their families here in the States, was Obama. But I think it was just weird how all the actions that Obama did, they were pinning it on Trump. And it's like, why would they do that? We know what Obama did. It's almost as if the media wants you to forget what Obama did during his time, and they want you to think Trump did it. Because Trump is racist. Trump wants to build a wall. Trump doesn't want immigrants to come here and prosper. Right? Trump only wants white people to be, prospering, because he's a white supremacist, right? Okay, too bad. The majority of Cubans alone, I don't know about any other Latin country, but Cubans are very pro-Trump because they agree with this. They do not like the idea of a bunch of people crossing through the border. They believe that you should come legally. Now, I went back to Cubans for a reason. Cubans were able to touch the keys, wet foot, dry foot, and they were able to stay here. Obama stopped that. Obama ended the wet foot, dry foot. That's why now Cubans, if they want to flee Cuba, they have to take an airplane to Nicaragua, and then from Nicaragua they have to figure out how to get to Mexico. If Obama really cared about immigration and prosperity, then why would he end wet foot, dry foot? So there's a lot of weird things, weird decisions in the Obama administration that just don't add up to this mentality of, oh, we're trying to be humanitarian. I don't think so. I think you're telling people you're trying to be humanitarian, but you're really not. And I'll tell you why. Because during the Biden's presidency, they have the same mindset as the Obama's presidency. Okay, here's the problem. That mindset is flawed. Now we're seeing the results of that flawed mindset, with crime spiking in California, even though, funny enough, they believe that sanctuary cities do not have higher crime rates. There's no correlation between violent crime and sanctuary cities. I disagree with that statement. So California is a sanctuary city. Sanctuary city started in the 1980s because of this huge civil rights matter that was happening in Central America. A bunch of immigrants were coming here, and then they tried to plea asylum. The federal government said no. They were already here though, pleading asylum. That's why this doesn't work. That's why the Trump administration had it right, because you cannot be pleading asylum while you're already in the country, because they can just deny your asylum and you can just stay here chilling, versus plea asylum outside the country and then we decide if you're going to come in or not. Period. So what happened? They were denied, and then a bunch of churches were taking them in. And then a sanctuary city became a thing because a lot of cities were going against the federal government's resolution to the asylum seekers. They rejected their asylum, and as a result, a bunch of cities were going against the federal government's decision. Now, sanctuary cities are actually feeling the choices they made. They do not want to admit that they had the wrong mindset from the very beginning, and that being a humanitarian for people that do not pay taxes over people that do is wrong. It is immoral, it is unethical, it is unjust, it is unlawful for leaders of cities to say, yes, we open arms these illegal migrants, to the point that it's actually affecting day-to-day Americans who live there. That is why it is important to understand that we have to focus on what is in Americans' interest. And what Americans care about the most is our security. We are humans. We love our fellow humans. We want immigrants to come and enjoy the fruits that we get to enjoy. But there needs to be a correct and orderly way and humane way of doing it. And this is not the way. We have children being trafficked through the border. Why do you think Sound of Freedom got so much traction? Why do you think it got so much backlash by a lot of people who are pro-sanctuary cities, pro-open border? Because they don't want to admit that their mindset is destructive to the American society. They believe that being a humanitarian is more important than securing the American people's lives. And it's time we stand up and we say, no, we pay for you to care for us first. We come first, then everybody else. That's not selfish to say. It's the right thing to say. We pay taxes in order for us to be able to call 911, right? And 911 should be here like as soon as possible. If we have a influx of immigrants coming in, that could affect law enforcement. Alone, it can affect law enforcement. And that's just an example. But there are so many situations that come about by allowing too many people that don't have the money to live here, and they need federal assistance to help them. It is unfair. It is unfair for the single mothers. It is unfair for the single fathers who are American citizens. It is unfair for the veterans. It is unfair for the elderly. Look at what happened to that veteran in New York City. He got kicked out of where he was living because they were going to house illegal immigrants. Like, how absurd does that, like, think about that. They're kicking out somebody who literally risked his life for the safety of this country. They're kicking this man out of his own sanctuary to move in people that have never paid a tax, or never paid a dime, that never worked a day in their life in this country. They're the ones being focused on. It's time we say no. It's time we fight back. Not with violence. That's what they want. That's why every democratic activist group starts their protest peacefully and ends in violence, because in reality, it wasn't meant to be a protest, it was meant to be a riot. That's why it ended up becoming that. We don't need to do that. We're better than that. We're bigger than that. We're smarter than that. We just need to speak. We need to use our First Amendment right to speak. The Founding Fathers gave us this right, and it's the first one for a reason, because it is one of the most important ones, aside from the second, of course. In Cuba, they took away our first and our second. And that's it. That's all you need. Take away the First Amendment right to speak up and speak the truth. Take away the second, to bear arms, and where we can defend ourselves against tyranny. And that's it. You have a controlled society. You have a brainwashed, hive mind society. And that's what the Marxists want. And I'm bringing it back to, that's why I believe what they did in Cuba, they want to do here. They said Cuba was a social experiment. But they want to do what they did in Cuba here on a grander scale. But of course, China wants to get in on it. Americans are under attack. We're under attack by our own government. The word government is government. Mente means mind. Governed mind. They want to govern our mind. They have no intentions of actually fixing the problems that they have created. Instead, they want to make us believe we are the problem. But in this channel, we're going to speak up. We are the solution. Thank you so much, guys. This is Mary Truth's Talks. I'm excited to continue on this journey of evolution with you guys. Like and subscribe to stay connected, and let's stop this Marxist mentality together. See you guys next time.